My name is August. I am 27 years old, and I am standing on a ship that will be at the bottom of the ocean before sunrise. They will say 1,292 people died that night. They will list the numbers by class, by cabin, by ticket price. But numbers do not scream. Numbers do not hold their children above the waterline and beg God for one more minute. I was there. I was below deck. And I need you to understand what those numbers felt like from the inside. The food was the first miracle. I had spent weeks on cattle boats and in rooming houses that smelled like wet wool and tobacco. I had eaten bread so hard it could crack a tooth. Then I sat down in the third-class dining saloon of the Titanic, and a man in a white coat put a plate of roast beef in front of me. Potatoes, gravy, bread that was soft and warm. My friend Gunnar looked at me across the table and laughed. He said we had already arrived in America. I had left Sweden because Sweden was finished with me. I had published a pamphlet that called the king a thief. The courts did not find that funny. So I bought papers in Copenhagen under a new name, boarded the biggest ship ever built, and told myself the Atlantic was the widest eraser in the world. Our cabin was on G-deck, deep in the bow. 3 bunks, a wash basin, a porthole you could not open. The steel walls hummed with the engines, a low vibration that traveled through the mattress and into your ribs. Gunnar and I shared the cabin with Carl, a carpenter from Örebro who was dodging the army. The 3 of us were socialists, troublemakers, men who had talked too much and printed the wrong words. Now we were eating roast beef on the most expensive ship in the world, 60 feet below the waterline. That was the trick of the Titanic. She made you forget you were at sea. She made you forget you were floating on 2 miles of black water with nothing underneath you but pressure and cold. She made you feel like the ground was solid, like the walls would hold. By Sunday the 14th of April, I believed it. I was in the smoking room when it happened. A card game, cigarettes. Gunnar was telling a story about a girl in Burlington, Iowa. The clock said 20 minutes before midnight. Then the engine stopped. That was the strangest sound I had ever heard. Not a crash, not a bang, just silence. The hum that had lived in the walls for 4 days suddenly was not there. It was like the ship had stopped breathing. I felt something through my shoes. A low, grinding vibration, like a fingernail dragged slowly across a chalkboard, but deeper. It lasted maybe 10 seconds. Then nothing. Gunnar stopped talking. Carl put his cards down. A steward walked past and said everything was fine. Someone said we had hit an iceberg. A third man said he had seen ice on the forward deck, but it was nothing to worry about. I put on my coat and went up. The air hit me like a wall. 28 degrees. The stars were out, more stars than I had ever seen, and the sea was flat, perfectly flat, like a sheet of black glass. No wind, no swell. Just the ship, sitting still with her lights on and her funnels venting steam. I could not see any iceberg, but the engines were still off. And the ship was leaning. Just barely, maybe 2 degrees forward, but I could feel it in my ankles. I went back down. By the time I reached G-deck, the water had found us. It was not a flood. Not yet. It was seeping, coming under the doors of the forward cabins like something alive, feeling its way along the corridor, running in thin streams between the steel plates. A woman was standing in her doorway holding a suitcase. A man was on his knees, trying to push a towel against the gap under his door. The towel was already soaked through. I found Gunnar and Carl. We grabbed our life belts. Gunnar could speak English, most of the others could not. There were Finns and Norwegians and Swedes and Syrians and Lebanese and Italians, all packed into corridors they had never explored, none of them sure where to go. A steward came through and said to go back to bed. A different steward came through 5 minutes later and said to put on life belts and go up. We started climbing. The Titanic was a maze below the waterline. Corridors that turned into dead ends, stairways that went up one deck and stopped, signs in English that half the passengers could not read. And the further forward you went, the worse it got. Water was pooling on E-deck. It was ankle deep at the bottom of the stairwell, cold enough to make your legs go numb in seconds. I could hear it below us. Not the engines were done. I could hear the ocean. It sounded like rain inside a drum. A steady, heavy, relentless drumming that got louder every time we stopped moving. We found Scotland Road. It was the main service corridor on E-deck, long and wide enough to drive a cart through. The crew used it to move supplies from bow to stern without going through the passenger areas. Now it was full of people, third-class passengers who had found their way up, stewards trying to organize groups, firemen coming up from the boiler rooms with soot on their faces and wild eyes. One of the firemen grabbed my arm. He was shaking. He said the water was coming through the starboard side 2 feet above the floor plates. He said boiler room 6 was gone. He said the sound of it was like nothing he had ever heard, like the ship was groaning, like the steel was being torn apart by something that was not in any hurry. I believed him. I could feel the floor tilting. That is when we found the gates. They were steel lattice barriers, waist-high, bolted between the stanchions at the bottom of the stairwells that led to the upper decks. They were not locked with padlocks. They were simply there. And there were stewards standing in front of them saying, "Women and children first, stay calm, wait your turn." But there was no turn. There was no system. There was just a gate and a man in a white coat and 200 people behind him who did not speak his language. I watched a Syrian woman hold her baby up over the gate. A steward took the baby. Then he closed the gate. The woman screamed. She could not get through. I do not know if she ever did. Gunnar translated. He told the steward we needed to go up. The steward said to wait. Gunnar said the water was rising. The steward said he had his orders. Gunnar said orders did not matter when the ship was sinking. The steward said the ship was not sinking. It was. By 1 in the morning, the forward well deck was underwater. The bow was down maybe 15 degrees. The lifeboats on the port side were being loaded. I could hear the davits creaking. I could hear a woman crying. I could hear someone playing a hymn. I did the math. The Titanic carried 20 lifeboats. Each one held about 65 people. That was room for maybe 1,300. There were 2,200 people on the ship. The math did not work. It had never worked. The lifeboats were not designed for everyone. They were designed for enough. And enough did not include us. I helped some Swedish girls up a service ladder. There was a crew passage behind the pantry that led to the boat deck. It was not guarded. It was not on any map. A fireman had showed it to us. The girls went up. I told them to get into a boat and not look back. I went back down. I found Gunnar at the stern. The poop deck was crowded, hundreds of people. Some were praying, some were singing. A group of Irish passengers was saying the rosary together, their voices steady, their eyes closed. An old friend of ours, Johan Lundahl, shook my hand and said, "Goodbye, friends." He said he was too old to fight the Atlantic. He walked to the smoking room and sat in a chair and waited. An English lady sat at the piano in the second-class lounge with her child on her knee. She played. I do not know what she played. I just remember the sound of it coming through the open door as the deck tilted and the water climbed. The ship was breaking. You could feel it. A deep shuddering that came up through the deck plates, through your knees, through your chest. The lights flickered, went out, came back, flickered again. The stern was rising, 20 degrees, 30. People were sliding down the deck, grabbing benches, grabbing railings, grabbing each other. A man lost his grip and went down the slope, and I heard him hit something metal, and he did not make a sound after that. Then the lights went out for good. The sound that followed will never leave me. It was the sound of everything inside the ship breaking loose. Everything that was not bolted down. Engines, boilers, pianos, china, all of it falling forward through the dark, crashing through bulkheads, tearing through decks. 15,000 tons of machinery and furniture and hope sliding forward into the sea. Then the ship broke in two. The stern dropped back level for a moment. Just a moment. People thought it was over. People thought the stern would float. It did not. It rose again, straight up, almost vertical. I could see the propellers against the stars. 3 bronze propellers the size of windmills hanging in the sky, dripping. Then it went down. The suction pulled me under. The cold hit me like a fist. 28-degree water does not feel like cold. It feels like burning. Every nerve in your body fires at once. Your muscles seize, your lungs scream. You have maybe 15 minutes before your heart stops, maybe less. I found a raft. That is what I call it. It was Collapsible A, an emergency boat that had washed off the roof of the officers' quarters without its canvas sides being raised. It was swamped, knee-deep in seawater. Maybe 30 of us climbed onto it or grabbed its edges. We stood in the water. We stood because there was nowhere to sit. The water was up to our knees. The cold was taking us one by one. A man would stop talking. Then he would stop shivering. Then he would let go. And that is when something happened that I did not expect. The people who were left chose each other. A Swedish couple, Edvard and Ellen Lindell, held onto the raft together. He held her hand above the waterline. She was too cold to grip. He held her anyway. When she went limp, he kept holding. He held her hand until he died too. They went together. I tried to hold 2 children. They were from a Swedish family, the Palsons, little ones. I had their coats, I had their weight. And then a wave came, and it took them from me, and the dark swallowed them, and there was nothing I could do. I reached for them, but there was only water. That is the part that stays. Not the cold, not the screaming, not the ship going down. The weight of those children in my arms, and then the absence of it. The nothing where they had been. But we held on. We held on because the man next to us was holding on. We held on because someone was still breathing, and that breath was the only warm thing in the entire Atlantic. We held on because letting go was the easiest thing in the world, and we had spent our whole lives doing hard things, The screaming stopped around 3 a.m. That was worse. 1,500 people in the water, and then silence. Just the sound of small waves against the raft and the breathing of the ones who were left. There were 12 of us when the sun came up. Lifeboat 14 found us at dawn. 5th Officer Lowe had gone back. Most of the lifeboats did not go back. Most of them sat half empty, a few hundred yards from where people were dying, and they did not go back. Lowe did. He transferred his passengers, he rigged a sail, and he came for us. I could not climb into the boat. My legs were gone. They lifted me like cargo. They put a blanket on me and I fell asleep, and I did not wake up until the Carpathia. Of the 710 people in 3rd class, 174 survived. 1 in 4. In 1st class, the survival rate was 62%. The numbers tell you everything. The gates tell you everything. But here is what the numbers do not tell you. They do not tell you about Gunnar, who translated for strangers in a flooding corridor because he could. They do not tell you about the fireman who showed us the passage because he thought we deserved a chance. They do not tell you about Johan, who chose his chair because he wanted to leave the water for someone younger. They do not tell you about the Irish women praying in the dark, or a man holding his wife's hand in freezing water because letting go was not something he knew how to do. I received $25 from the Salvation Army and a train ticket to Chicago. I went to Indiana. I became a gardener. I raised 7 children. I am not in the history books, not the ones that matter. They write about the rich people and the lifeboats and the band. They write about the iceberg and the rivets and the bulkheads. They do not write about us. The ones below deck. The ones who are never supposed to make it. My name is August Wennerström. I was 27 years old. A journalist, a troublemaker. A man who called a king a thief and crossed an ocean with a borrowed name. I stood on a sinking raft in the North Atlantic, and I chose to hold on. And I am still here, in the only way that matters. I am still here. If you want to see history through the eyes of the people who lived it, subscribe to this channel. The next story is already waiting.